3. I think I've tried several times to go live today and you've joined in and then it hasn't gone ahead, so I'm giving it another go. I received so many messages for my last live about topics that you are interested in. And quite a few of you said that you prefer me to stick to the one topic rather than bounce around with topics. Yet with live, we have people writing in. And you have the creator looking at the comments and also thinking about what to say. Some of the common requests for answers were anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, how to cope with someone close to you being murdered, how to sleep, how to cope with narcissistic behaviors. And I thought I would talk a little bit about one of these topics. So we'll pick one to talk about. I have edited the story about my father because so many of you asked about my father. So I'm trying to edit that at the moment, but I'm having a little bit of difficulty. So we'll see how we go with that. The video I did on trauma and how to work through trauma was really popular. So I wanted to touch on that. And I also wanted to look at these topics and attempt to give you some tools to cope with this. As you know, I have a small cough, so I've got water here. One of the points that I continue to emphasize is that there's two parts of us. We are an animal, and as an animal, we are a herd animal. We're a herd animal. We are instinctively attracted to the herd, or you could say the tribe, or the flock, or whatever. We are a social animal. So in the optimum state, we are drawn to being with a group and creating structures within that group, whether it's the family, community, or whatever. So we have the animal side of us that is drawn to having a partner, to having sex, to eating, all those animal instincts. And then we have our consciousness and our subconsciousness. Our consciousness is about 10%, and about 90% of us is subconscious. So we've got this animal, instinctive, producing hormones, and then we've got this conscious and subconscious. And some people call it the soul or the higher consciousness. I'm not so keen on the word higher. It's a little bit elitist. So we walk this balance. We walk this careful balance, this tightrope. So imagine two big mountains with a tightrope, and we're walking along trying to walk that balance between being a compulsive animal and being a conscious soul, self, our consciousness. Subconsciousness, really important. That's the area that we're not so aware of. So we're like a computer. We're each like a computer. And we have software that's already put in there. All sorts of software. The software could be, so we learn as a child to be safe. And everything we learn is about safety. So conservative behavior, the body likes because there's no risk. New behavior, changes, is hard for the body because the body thinks, oh, is this safe? Is this not safe? So to try new things, set new goals, you've got to fight against that body instinct to do the same thing. When we are babies and we are children and then teenagers, we are imprinted with computer software. That computer software could include memories, dominant thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and behavioural patterns. If we repeat a particular behavioural pattern a number of times, it almost becomes adopted. You know, like when you use an ATM, you know, the machine in the wall, you don't even think about how you type anymore, you just do it. Or drive a car. These are automatically learned and they're very powerful. So if you have a trauma when you're a child, to undo that software takes a real reboot. Those subconscious beliefs. So let's look at some of the subconscious beliefs. They could be, I'm fat. So when you, and you know I don't like labels, when you get older, whatever you look like, you feel that way. I am hopeless because somebody told you at some particular time in life that you're hopeless. So you adopt this software, this self-talk, I'm hopeless. I'll never be any good. I'll never achieve. So the self-talk comes from the thoughts affected by the feelings coming from the subconscious. So you might attend a motivational talk, read a motivational book and go, yes, I'm ready to take on the world. I'm ready to give up my trauma. I'm ready to get over this narcissistic relationship. But your subconscious tells you you're not good enough. Your subconscious tells you that you're unlovable. Your subconscious may tell you that you can't stand being abandoned. So it almost works against you. And the way that we contest that, or the way that we work through that, is get to know ourselves in our own right. Sounds easy, doesn't it? It's not. So we are a social being, which means we want to belong to the pack. We want to wear the clothes that the pack likes. We want to watch the ads that the pack likes. We want to follow the trends of the pack. And we don't really even know we're doing that. We want to belong. And then, for us to be happy or content, we need to get to know ourselves by ourselves. We need to complete ourselves. So we need to unpack our subconscious state, reboot and create new software. We need to learn conscious coding of our soul, and put in new software, and that software needs to be automatic. So how do we do that? How do we bring in new software? Silence, sitting in silence, and opening up your mind to the questions of the universe. Sitting in silence. Practice sitting in silence. You know the word practice. It's a really important term. We need to do things again and again for it to come to fruition. Whether it's fitness, we need to keep eating to stay alive, we need to practice breathing, we need to practice. Practice sitting in silence so that we get to know ourselves, so that when we go back to the pack or the herd, we are of greater service to the herd, but we also feel joy. Sitting in silence over time brings mental clarity and joy. Chanting is another really important element. So chanting the earth chants again and again to bring enlightenment and to bring joy. Guided meditation to heal. Keeping a diary where we look at our life chronologically and consider our self-talk. When you consider your self-talk, you start to understand the subconscious coding in your mind. If you find yourself saying, she's going to leave me, he's going to leave me, or they're unfaithful, or I'm no good, or I'm not smart, these are subconscious imprints that you can change. Not easy to change. Not easy. Takes practice, takes strategy, requires repetition. And then you have trauma. Everything we talk about in cognitive behavioral therapy, there's research and there's strategies and there's method to resolve. And then you have trauma. Trauma is when a bad experience is imprinted so severely, so intricately into your mind, your soul. It's like a cow being branded with a hot iron. Awful thought. You have been branded with this terrible, terrible memory, and you may have flashbacks to this memory. You may respond physically because we wear our consciousness. We wear our consciousness physically. Our body is our best source of reference for how we are. So when you walk into a room with a group of people, your body will let you know, if you listen, what sort of people they are, how you feel about them. Your body will let you know about your trauma. Your body will let you know about loss. So cognitive behavioral therapy is one doorway to healing of many doorways. I'm quite spiritual, so there's so many different avenues I can sit on. And then there is trauma, which is a whole different kettle of fish. There is no one-size-fits-all way of dealing with trauma. It depends on the individual, and the individual needs to work through their trauma when and if it suits. It is I'm saying is vibes empath from trauma. Trauma is such a strong imprint that it often overrides our intuition, often overrides our sense of self, and it's almost an animal in its own right. So I would say, without having you in front of me, any of you that have experienced trauma, and you can have flashbacks as well, the first step is self-care. The first step, it's like laying the foundations to a house. Self-care is not a silver bullet. It doesn't fix the trauma. But just as you would lay foundations to a house and you'd have an engineer check the soil, get a soil report, etc., when you've had a major trauma, you start to look at your sleep patterns, your health, what you're eating. And I know it can sound really demeaning. Oh yes, you've had a terrible trauma, sexual assault or whatever else, get some sleep. No, that's not what I mean. It's a process. You know, I talk about process where work in progress, where you move forward slightly, move back, you might fall down, you might get up. Now remember with trauma, some trauma is never to be revisited. I don't know which trauma that is, only you know. All trauma, I think, requires specialist support. Videos such as this, they serve as supportive therapy only. That's all they can do. They can only be supportive therapy. That means as part of a care team or a care plan with a specialist, you may use videos to support you. But without having you in front of a specialist, the video, as personal as you can make it, is limited. And you matter. You have value, you matter. So the video is one of the tools in your toolkit. So imagine that you've had a loss or you're sad or whatever. You have a toolkit and the videos or a playlist are part of that toolkit. Your health, doing yoga, stretching, exercise, friendship. We're talking about healing, and we're talking specifically about trauma. And I'm explaining the complexity of it. Because as a counsellor in Australia, we sign a code of conduct ethics that we do not, we do not counsel in certain areas. These are the areas of suicide, post-traumatic stress disorder, and some trauma. The reason being is it requires absolute specialist support under the guise of a supervisor, a team. And I've been asked so many times, good on you. I've been asked so many times to talk about trauma, and I've been asked so many times to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, but I know the ethics of my role that I don't do that. So what I'm doing instead is talking about the processes here. And number one with trauma, self-care, right? Just have a plan for self-care with the awareness that that's not the silver bullet. With the awareness that, again, I said this earlier in the video, it's not about, I'll go and eat a good meal and the trauma will go away. Trauma is like insidious. We had the house metaphor with the foundations of the house. Trauma is like termites, and they eat through the wood and they can't be seen. You can have flashbacks. You can have subconscious imprints where suddenly you are somewhere and you are snatched back to the memory. You can see the memory. You can smell the memory. I had one minor incident. It was minor when I was a teenager, of sexual assault. I went to the library in Melbourne, and when I left the library, I can't say slightly sexually assaulted. Somebody grabbed me in a sexual way that was quite invasive. And I was wearing a particular perfume. And every time I smell that perfume, I go back to that. I was wearing a loose skirt, and I may as well explain it to you clearly. I was wearing a loose skirt, and he came up from behind and just threw the material, put his hand very roughly, and then kept walking and hit me. I didn't tell my parents. Maybe I was 14, 15. And every time I smell that perfume, I smelled the perfume a couple of days ago, and when I smelt it, straight away, I went back there. I cannot drive, now this is, let me see, 40 years ago, 30 years ago? I cannot drive past the State Library without remembering the colour of my dress, the colour of his eyes, the anger in his face. Yes, I think it's limited in Australia as well. I remember it so vividly, and I have friends who have experienced rape. I have worked in I've worked in jails with offenders, and it has given me a lot of empathy for them. It's such a complex process. But with trauma, you're working on so many layers. You're working on the animal side of us. You're working on the consciousness and the subconsciousness. So it's like the pyramids. You know how they made the pyramids by hand? It's a massive project to move through trauma. I mentioned to you about my father with his night terrors. And so for the first maybe 5 years of my life, yes, I'm so sorry, yes, talking about nausea from that. For the first 5 years of my life, I had to, about 5 years, turn off the TV if there was any gunshots, or hide potato peel, certain things that reminded Dad of that experience. But the effect of that was that I was scared of those same triggers. So the reason we have these memories, these flashbacks of trauma, it's an instinctive reaction to keep us safe. So it's supposed to have a sound purpose to keep us as animals safe. But it's like an immune system going crazy because it goes too far. You can literally re-smell the incident, re-taste the incident, relive the incident. Working through trauma is tough and multi-layered. Hypervigilance, we're talking about hypervigilance here. It's interesting because hypervigilance, we have the ability to be hypervigilant. That means all our senses are turned on, adrenaline going, fight or flight, what are we going to do? It's there to keep us safe. But the problem with hypervigilance is it creates so much cortisol and keeps us in this heightened state where we will react like animals, fight or flight. Yes, lovely to see you. And long term, it's not the best state to be. It's there for when we're, nomads traveling the earth and we wanted to get away from the tigers. Now, we can work through these experiences. I'm getting so many comments about hypervigilance. I don't know your answers. If I said I know your answers, I would be irresponsible, unprofessional. What I do know is that you know your answers. And part of your answer is having a community around you. I don't know who should be in that community, but you know. Healing requires that we heal the animal, we heal the consciousness, and we heal the subconsciousness. We have our toolbox, and the first one is identifying the trauma. The second one is forgiving yourself for the trauma. Saying it's okay. You are okay. It's okay. Terrible things happen to good people. Tragedy happens to good people. When my brother died, I identified him in the morgue, and I wasn't allowed to touch him. And all I could think, he was dead. All I could think was I needed to hug him because he was cold. Now that doesn't make sense because he was dead, but I was desperate to hug him. And we weren't allowed to touch him for, I think it was 3 days or something, some period of time. And then when I did, we all had different reactions, the family, and how to grieve. I needed to hug him, so I sat him up and I hugged him. And we brought his aftershave and we put his aftershave on him. And the smell, it's such a strong memory to identify somebody in the morgue. It's like you think life is ABC and then you identify your brother in the morgue, and it's so, well, this is life. And these are some of the elements that inspire me to do my meditations. What I want to do in my meditations is integrate healing into them. But the healing needs to be to wake you up. So I'm not healing you, you're waking up. The idea is that it teaches your brain to find its own solutions. Because life can be really hard. It can be really shitty. It can be really tragic. Terrible things can happen. And you need to find your own pathway. And you know that my father didn't believe in the self-made man. You know that story, I'm sure. I don't believe in the self-made man. We are a community. We help each other. But we need the right community. We need people that spread and share compassion. Once you feel compassion for your abuser, that is a strong sign of healing. I'm not saying go off now and feel compassion for your abuser. That's not going to work. But if you take your toolbox of so many different ways to get to know the value of who you are, because you're an amazing, amazing soul. You have incredible value. You are, oh my goodness, you are amazing. You are a complete miracle. You are a miracle. Life doesn't always reinforce that fact that we're miracles, but we are miracles. So moving through trauma is a process deep in your heart that you know. Meditation, guided meditation, can give you the tools. I build the tools in to the meditations. And sometimes one of the things that I find limiting is words, because you can be looking at a beautiful sunset and the sunset's full of oranges and blues and bright light, and it's just majestic. As soon as you look at that sunset and you say, that's a beautiful sunset, you are no longer enjoying the sunset. Words are so limited and can mean so many different things, and words stop experience. They stop experience. We sit on the words rather than the experience. So we should sit and feel compassion. Forget the word. Or feel contentment. Forget the word. I've had some comments in my videos that people are not keen on me saying relax because they feel that it makes them do the opposite. We need to use words to suit us rather than thank you, thank you. We need to use words to suit us. Notice that sometimes people will use words to manipulate others. So they'll say, yeah. So they'll say, oh, you're oversensitive, or you're taking it too seriously, or you're over-emotional. They're using words to manipulate and control. Let's take it back a step. Over-emotional. We are emotional beings. What is over-emotional? If you translate it, it is the abuser saying, I don't like the way you're expressing yourself. It doesn't suit my needs. Do not limit yourself to words. Let your mind go beyond the words. Use meditation to suit you. Meditation needs to suit you. If I use a word that doesn't resonate with you, don't listen to it. You are your own best shaman or doctor or advisor. Deep in your heart, there is yourself. And nobody knows who you are. And nobody is ever going to know who you are. It doesn't work like that. We're born alone, we die alone, we might meet a partner, we might have a great love. It will not last. Someone is going to die. We move through life wanting this amazing epiphany, this time where I'm so in love with him or her, or I've got this dream job, or I've got millions of dollars. None of it's coming to the grave. You don't get to fit a car in the grave. You don't get to, well, my mum and dad did go together, didn't they? But you go by yourself, you pass through this world by yourself. Your happiness, and I'm not keen on the word happiness because happiness is a high. I like to think of contentment. Or joy, I like the word joy. Thank you, Claire. Your joy can only come from you knowing yourself. You can only know yourself in the silence, and that requires practice, concentration, and deliberation. No one is going to know you, ever. They will see you through the perception of the glasses of their experience, their stories. I've talked about how I was always disagreeing with my mum. And I look back and I realise I wanted her to be responsible for my happiness. So the fact that she brought me up as such a strict Catholic didn't prepare me for university, so I blamed her. I made her the scapegoat for everything wrong. Now, she wasn't perfect, but she was full of love. She was pretty perfect, full of love. But as a young person, I wanted to blame someone. Sometimes we want a guru. We want to find somebody to follow. I've got several people I follow at the moment. Be careful to always analyze your beliefs. Always unpack your thoughts. When you look at thoughts and feelings, you've got to consider, where do they come from? Where do my feelings come from? Where do my thoughts come from? I am the thinker, I am the feeler. So we feel emotion, we think thoughts that come from our consciousness and our subconsciousness. As the feeler, I'm the thinker. I can choose other thoughts. Now, if I said that to somebody that had experienced a trauma, that would be really demeaning and horrible, because you can have such a deep imprint. But we can reprogram ourselves over time, most of the time. Disclaimer, someone that has experienced an incredible trauma may never revisit it, and that may be a good idea. So, when we sit and we think in silence and we open our mind up to space, when there is space, we have the space for the universe to come in. If we fill our mind with thoughts and feelings and distractions and desires, our mind becomes full, it becomes cluttered, it becomes busy, and there's no room for the universe to get in. There's no room for God to get in. There's no room for awareness to come in. Awareness, knowing yourself. Thank you. Awareness, knowing yourself, comes from the silence. Silence is challenging. I chant a lot. I pray a lot. I do a huge amount of yoga, so it's really wonderful I've had the hip replacement because I can do a huge amount of yoga now. These help me. The yoga's good because it combines with breath the union between body and soul. So we continue to remember the union between body and soul. There is a lot of research to say that getting to know your body can help heal, or the healing process with trauma, because our body holds the trauma. So we can ascertain or work towards knowing what part of our body is holding what memory, what trauma, what thought, and work towards releasing it. Again, I know I'm making it sound simple. It's not simple. Body scans are really, really important. And with the body scans, I often add words, concepts like compassion, etc. In reality, it should be you doing it yourself. Yes, that's true. You doing the body scan yourself and opening yourself up to the universe, listening to your body. What does your body have to tell you today? Your body may say, I'm not keen on that relationship you're in, or I think we need a change of direction. Yes. Yeah, my jaw is one of, I have a lot of magnesium. We're just talking about where you hold it. You may hold it in your throat. I'm a strong believer in chakras as well. There's medical evidence of chakras and the vibration of the earth and how chanting works in with the vibrations of the earth. So you can have a look at that. I find chanting incredibly healing when I'm not sure or not certain how to proceed. And the more I chant, the more clear-minded I feel. So with yoga, and you don't have to be good at yoga, by breathing and focusing, concentrating on the alignment of yoga, you can quieten your mind. I'm really into, I love Om Namah Shivaya and Om. They're a big part of my life. The only way to heal is silence. The only way to self-awareness and enlightenment is silence. Enlightenment is a discipline. It requires focus. And when we are, they're pretty hard to do actually, downward dogs. When we are enlightened, one of the signs of being enlightened, and we can go in and out of it. Jim Carrey has a funny story where he says he's been enlightened once and not since then. So we can be enlightened for a moment and then not enlightened. When we're enlightened, we will feel or we will cry tears of compassion for our abusers. And I'm not saying that you've got to do that. I'm not saying that. An enlightened person sees the vulnerability of others and sees their story. Now, I'm getting so many questions about narcissistic behaviours, so many, so I can see I need to do something on narcissism. Yes, yin yoga helps with sleep and there's certain poses, and I'll talk about that sometime. A lot of you have been asking about narcissistic behaviours. And what was I going to say about narcissistic behaviours? Through this process of feeling compassion for people, that's a question that I want to answer. Feeling compassion for people, part of compassion is having boundaries. If someone is treating you badly, you can feel compassion for them without being involved. Enlightenment, being self-aware, requires boundaries. Lack of boundaries come from childhood experience. We copy or repeat the lack of boundaries because we haven't unpacked a situation from our childhood. Now, when I say we haven't unpacked a situation from our childhood, it makes me sound like we're deficit in some way or we haven't done something we should. This stuff's hard. They don't teach it in school. There's so much they could teach in school. Compassion, for one. Someone sent a message, is mania the same as enlightenment? Enlightenment is a feeling where their time doesn't exist. It is overwhelming joy and a feeling that your body is one with everything. Mania is when you are fixated, heightened, focused on one thing to the point of lack of balance, repetitive. Mania is a mental health issue, a complex mental health issue. I've got so many comments about narcissistic behaviors, and I've written so many videos where I say you choose and you decide your thoughts and feelings. If you've experienced narcissistic behaviors, it is a long, complex road to healing, because with somebody that displays predominantly narcissistic behaviors, they're like a jigsaw puzzle. So your hole or your lack or your trauma or your childhood deficit experience from your caregiver. So you've got some sort of lack, some sort of hole, some sort of vulnerability, some sort of pain, and you want that hole filled up. The narcissistic person, I prefer to talk about behavior than labels. So the person with narcissistic behaviors wants to be God, wants to be adored. Now, they've suffered in childhood as well, but they've chosen the path of destroying others in order to build themselves up. Now, it doesn't work for them, so they do it more and more and more. For us to heal, we need to be responsible for our own mistakes and take responsibility. On most occasions, people with narcissistic behaviors are not able to do that. They focus on blame. I don't like that word, blame. So with a narcissistic relationship, you have someone with predominantly narcissistic behaviors, somebody that perhaps has not been loved in childhood, perhaps experienced trauma, perhaps had a strong subconscious imprint that was damaging, and they're looking to fill that. The person with narcissistic behaviors is very, very clever at discovering the whole. What does this person want? So they invest significant time making that person feel whole, validating them, demonstrating empathy, caring, being loving in practice, in behavior, over a significant period of time without faltering. Once the attachment is formed, and the person with the background hole or trauma or situation, once the attachment is formed, the bond is formed, and this person feels, oh my goodness, I finally got my soulmate, etc., then the person with narcissistic behaviors starts to show their true self. And their true self is they want to destroy you. They want to control you. They want to take out all their repressed memories, etc., on you and make you the target of their lack of self-esteem. And by the time they're bonded with us, it's pretty difficult to move through that bond. It's called a trauma bond. So that's narcissistic relationships in a nutshell, an absolute nutshell. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. So we can talk about that sometime, but with the awareness that this is a video. I'm at the end of a video. I don't know your story. I don't know what you've gone through. I know I care. I know you have worth. I know you are a miracle. I know that you're human. And I know that you're okay. Being okay is so many different things. Being okay is taking another breath when someone dies. Being okay is not getting the job that thank you, that you want. Being okay is having someone you love so much saying, I don't love you. Being okay is experiencing so many things. We have, cliche, we have one life. And our life is not our own. We don't own our life. It was given to us. And it comes with responsibilities. We are responsible for the earth. We are responsible for creating positive communities with compassion and love. That's our job. We are not free to do whatever we want with our life. We are not free to hurt ourselves or decide to leave this earth. We may do that if we're not well. But our role, the gift of our life, is given to us so that we can serve. That's what we're supposed to do. I think now I've spoken for about 46 minutes. If you have any last questions, otherwise I'm trying to finish this video on my father, but it's proving to be quite difficult. It's a story about my father, so it's part of it's really graphic, and yeah, so I'll put a disclaimer at the beginning. When you leave this video, take time, sit in a chair or lie down and ask your body. Just ask your body. Just ask and listen. Your body will let you know what to let go of if you listen. Body scan meditation. Listen and listen and listen and listen. And if you are really, thank you, really fortunate, if you're really fortunate and you work really hard, you can eventually feel compassion for those people that have let you down, hurt you, made opinions, judgment, and you can forgive them, and you can forgive yourself. You send me so many comments about how I'm amazing. I've made lots of mistakes. Lots of mistakes, oh my goodness. So many mistakes. We are a blank canvas when we're born, affected tremendously by our caregivers, and then our brain doesn't finish forming until we're 24. We don't have full ability to have perspective till our brain finishes growing at 24. So we've already got 24 years of mistakes. And then we're supposed to create a family. And when we have children, we're still living the stories of our trauma from childhood. And so my parents were still living the stories of their childhood. So when we blame somebody else, we're negating their humanity. And when we blame somebody else, we're negating our humanity. We're miracles. We're amazing, amazing, amazing miracles. Statistical anomalies. I mean, we are so lucky to have been chosen to be alive. So doesn't that choice, that life, come with responsibilities? Yeah, I love that we're all doing our best. We have the responsibility to treasure our life and care for others. And this is learning. I certainly feel angry with people. I certainly feel hurt. It's a practice of learning through that to improve. My greatest lessons have been adversity. I had the most awful experience I've ever had in my life just after Christmas. And I have created my best content since Christmas. Go figure, isn't that amazing? So the grief I have felt, I've actually felt like I can't bear to sit in that grief for another moment. Yet something about it means my content seems to, if I may say, demonstrate greater wisdom Through adversity lies opportunity. I love you. I really love you. Be okay. And the being of okay is up to you. To source your team. Our hugs to everyone. To source your team, your family. To find ways through, to work on resilience, to teach others resilience, to accept that life is a journey, not an arrival, to be careful of accumulating consumer goods. Every decision we make every day is one less decision we can make. Reduce attachment to things. Throw out your things. A big one, get rid of your things. One car in most situations. Declutter. Be silent and love. When someone makes a mistake, smile gently and let it go. If you go through a process of heightened emotion, forgive yourself, unpack it. Yeah, it's a process. I used to be a hoarder when I lived in another place, and it required several layers of different experiences for me to move beyond needing things. And then you can ask yourself, why do I need the things? What do I think these things are going to do for me? Are they bringing me joy? You know, Marie Kondo with the joy. We don't need a t-shirt in every colour. We don't. We need to love everybody. I'm going to go, everybody. I'm trying to fix this video for you. Thank you so much for listening to me. Please look after yourself. Look after that precious life you have. I love you.